Pripyat, Ukraine, April 26, 1986, 1:23 a.m. An explosion tears through Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Flames shoot 600 feet into the air. Radioactive graphite chunks litter the ground, glowing in the darkness. The fire alarm reaches the station at the plant within minutes. Lieutenant Vladimir Pravik, 23 years old, is leading the third watch. He wasn't supposed to be working. He'd switched shifts with his friend Pyotr Kamel. Now he's about to face the worst nuclear disaster in history. Pravik and his team arrive at 1:28 a.m., 5 minutes after the explosion. No protective gear, no radiation monitors, just firefighters with hoses rushing toward an inferno emitting 30,000 roentgen per hour. For context, 400 roentgen is fatal. They had 48 seconds before absorbing a lethal dose. Pravik climbed to the roof of the reactor building. His men kicked radioactive graphite off the roof with their boots when water wasn't enough. They descended into the reactor hall trying to cool a core burning at 2,000 degrees Celsius. Their water turned to steam before reaching the target. Within an hour, Pravik and his team were violently ill, dizzy, vomiting, collapsing. 16 days later, Vladimir Pravik died in Moscow Hospital No. 6 from acute radiation syndrome. He'd received an estimated 1370 rem, nearly triple a lethal dose, the highest confirmed radiation exposure at Chernobyl. This is the story of Chernobyl's first responder, the legend about his eyes, and the 28 firefighters who died saving Europe from complete catastrophe. The man who rushed in. Vladimir Pavlovich Pravik was born June 13, 1962, in Chernobyl itself, the town that would make his name infamous. His mother Natalia was a nurse, his father Pavlo, a construction worker. He grew up with interests in photography, electronics, drawing, and poetry. At 17, Pravik enrolled in Cherkasy Fire Technical Academy in 1979. After 3 years of training, he graduated as a junior officer and returned to Chernobyl in 1982, taking a command position in Militarized Fire Brigade No. 2, stationed at the nuclear power plant. By 1986, Pravik was a lieutenant commanding the brigade's third watch. He was married to Nadia, a kindergarten music teacher. 2 weeks before the disaster, she'd given birth to their daughter Natasha in Pripyat. When Pravik's parents visited him at Pripyat Hospital before his evacuation to Moscow, he told them through the window, "See that my wife and daughter are evacuated safely to her parents' home in central Ukraine. Until then, stay indoors with windows closed." They were among his last coherent words. The radiation that changed everything. The numbers from that night are almost incomprehensible. The uranium fuel and graphite on the roof emitted 20,000 roentgen per hour. Around the core, 30,000 roentgen. A fatal dose is 400 rem absorbed over 60 minutes. Pravik and his men absorbed lethal radiation in under a minute. Yet they kept fighting for hours. They extinguished fires on the roof, prevented the blaze from spreading to other reactor buildings. Their actions likely prevented a chain reaction that could have destroyed the other 3 reactors, potentially contaminating all of Europe. The symptoms came quickly. Dizziness, vomiting, acute radiation sickness manifesting within the hour. One firefighter developed radiation blisters so severe they formed on his heart. Skin began melting off bodies. Within 2 weeks, 28 firefighters and plant workers were dead. And then there's the claim that haunts Pravik's story, that the radiation was so intense, it changed his eye color from brown to blue. The eye color mystery. Multiple sources repeat this detail. The radiation allegedly turned Pravik's eyes from brown to blue. It appears in books, articles, documentaries. It's become part of Chernobyl folklore. But here's the problem. The claim is always qualified, allegedly, thought to be, is believed to have. Adam Higginbotham's authoritative 2019 book, Midnight in Chernobyl, is sometimes cited as the source. But even there, the claim isn't definitively confirmed. Wikipedia's article on Pravik, the most thoroughly sourced biography, doesn't mention the eye color change at all. Neither do official Soviet records or the Unskir report documenting his radiation exposure. So what's the truth? We don't know for certain. Radiation can cause many horrifying effects: skin damage, organ failure, DNA destruction, immune system collapse. But changing melanin in the iris from brown to blue isn't a documented medical phenomenon from radiation exposure. The claim may be legend, or exaggeration, or a misremembered detail that grew with retelling. What we know definitively, Pravik received 1370 rem, the highest confirmed dose at Chernobyl. He died from complete respiratory failure. His body was so radioactive it was buried in a sealed zinc coffin encased in concrete at Mitinskoye Cemetery in Moscow. Whether his eyes changed color, that remains unverified. But the truth of what he did, rushing into lethal radiation to save others, that's documented beyond question. The sacrifice. 28 people died in the first weeks after Chernobyl. Firefighters, plant workers, first responders. None had adequate protection. Most didn't understand the danger until symptoms appeared. Pravik was posthumously awarded Hero of the Soviet Union and the Order of Lenin on September 25, 1986. Ukraine later awarded him the Star for Courage, now Order for Courage. He was 23 years old at his death, younger than most college graduates. His wife Nadia and daughter Natasha evacuated to her parents' home in central Ukraine. They survived. But Natasha grew up without her father, knowing he died saving thousands of lives, perhaps millions, if the other reactors had exploded. Major Leonid Telyatnikov, who took command from Pravik at 1:47 a.m., also survived, though he lived with radiation sickness until his death in 2004. Two of Pravik's team members, Lieutenant Viktor Kibanok and several others, died alongside him in Moscow Hospital No. 6. Why it matters. Chernobyl released 400 times more radiation than Hiroshima. Without the firefighters' sacrifice in those first hours, the disaster could have been exponentially worse. If fires had spread to the other 3 reactors, much of Europe might have become uninhabitable. Up to 800,000 people, called liquidators, eventually helped clean up Chernobyl. The largest group, nearly 200,000, were first responders in 1986. They worked in conditions that destroyed even radio-controlled vehicles, the electronics fried by radiation. Where technology failed, humans stepped in. The government initially tried to hide the disaster. Sweden detected unusual radiation levels on April 28th and forced the Soviets to acknowledge what happened. By then, Pripyat, population 49,000, had been evacuated, but Pravik and his men were already dying in Moscow. Though what's true. So here's what we know. On April 26, 1986, at 1:23 a.m., Reactor 4 exploded. At 1:28 a.m., Vladimir Pravik arrived with his firefighting team. They had no protection, no understanding of radiation levels, just training, courage, and duty. They fought for hours in lethal radiation, prevented fires from spreading, saved countless lives, and paid with their own Did radiation change Pravik's eyes from brown to blue? The claim is repeated but unverified. It may be true. It may be legend. What's certain? He absorbed 1370 rem, died May 11th, 1986, was buried in a sealed zinc coffin, received his nation's highest honors. He was 23 years old, a new father, a poet and photographer, and when disaster struck, he ran toward it. That's the story that matters. Not whether his eyes changed color, but that he didn't hesitate. That he and 27 others died preventing catastrophe. Chernobyl's first responders, heroes whose sacrifice we're still benefiting from today.